Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commanders studio. Welcome to the show. So the Bloomburrow spoiler season and pre-con spoiler season are all wrapped up, and we've got the 34 commanders in total from them. So we can actually compare them now and say, what's the best, what's the worst, what's the most powerful, the least powerful. All of this is based on my own opinions, and keep in mind it's coming from a casual commander player's perspective, and let's jump into it. So with these tier list rankings, we're going to be starting our way off at the bottom and working our way up when it comes to mana value, because that's how Moxfield just, ranks them apparently. Phineas H. Ace Archer, a 2/2 Rabbit Archer for 2 mana in Selesnya. Vigilance Reach, whenever it attacks, put a counter on each other creature you control that's a token or a rabbit. Then if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, draw a card. I would say this one's on the lower end of the actual tiers. It's probably a C tier commander. I'd say it's not like the worst. It is not the worst, I don't think, although I do reserve the right to adjust these as I go. I mean, when it comes to going like rabbit tribal, that's probably not the most powerful thing. You'd probably rather just go okay, miscellaneous token creatures. Cool. Make a ton of them. Swing with this, get counters on it. You'll be able to draw cards with it pretty quickly. You are throwing this into danger, though, to actually do all of this. And getting an extra counter and everything is a little bit of a benefit. Not that big of a benefit, though. Next up, this one, oh goodness. Okay, so Gev, Scaled Scorch, not sure why this art popped up, but it's pretty sweet. A 3/2 Lizard Mercenary for 2 mana in Rakdos, Ward, pay 2 life. Other creatures you control enter with additional counter on them for each one who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a Lizard spell, Gev is going to deal 1 damage to target opponent. This is the kind of card where players, they read the whole card and they're like, well, I don't want to do lizards, I don't want to do lizards, so I'm not going to do it. Lizards aren't very good. It's not a good tribe. Ignore that. Literally, pretend that part's not on there at all. It does not matter. The part that does is literally, this is a persist creature god. This is essentially, hey, you get this in play. You get any persist creature in play, essentially like Murderous Redcap maybe, in a free sacrifice outlet, which there are a multitude of, like Viserys here. And guess what? You win. You just sacrifice things. Even if it's not Murderous Redcap, you get another one in play that has persist, and then all of a sudden you just sacrifice that, and you have Impact Tremors in play, and you win. Or Zulaport Cutthroat, and you win. There's a lot of ways to win. There's a lot of ways to combo with it. Yeah, basically persist, combo, crazy commander. This one's very, very, very good. I mean, it might be up in the S tier, but for right now, I'm going to throw out the A tier for now. There's a little bit of setup that happens with it, but obviously you're in black, you've got tutors, etc., and you've got Entomb effects and then reanimate effects too, so you can get the creatures that you need. Next up, Kitza Otterball Elite, a 1/3 Otter Wizard with Vigilance for 2 mana in blue. Prowess, tap, draw a card, discard a card. Pay to tap, copy target, insert sorcery spell you control, choose targets for the copy. Active one of its powers 3 or greater. I don't know why Wizards made this. I mean, it's basically a slightly worse Stella Lee. Yeah, I mean, that is incredibly easy to activate. The only difference between this and Stella Lee basically is that you need to pay 2 to tap and activate this versus free, which is why Stella Lee is broken with so many more things. This one is, I mean, you just need to get 1 extra power on this. You could cast 2 spells in the turn, or you can just attach a Bone Saw to this, and then all of a sudden you got there when you cast the spell. So copying something like Dramatic Reversal, infinite mana, congratulations. Or Turnabout if you've got mana dorks in play that can tap for mana too. Or just literally copying extra turn spells is incredibly powerful. I'd say overall, I'm probably going to throw this one up in the A tier as well. We've got some heavy hitters to start this off, and it might make me move Gev in a little bit, but we're gonna stay with that for now. Next up, Baylen the Haymaker, a 4/3 Rabbit Warrior for 3 mana in Naya. Tap 2 untap tokens you control, add 1 mana of any color. Tap 3 untap tokens you control, draw a card. Tap 4 untap tokens you control, 3 counters on it against Trim till end of turn. Not that you can ignore that last part. That last part could come in handy, sure. The first 2 things are what you really care about, though. Being able to just, oh my gosh, make an absurd amount of mana. Again, this is any tokens. It doesn't have to be creature tokens even. It could be any kind of tokens. Tap 2 of them, you get 1 mana. It basically turns every single one of your tokens into half of a mana rock or a mana dork. And then also a draw engine for you too. You're also in, I mean, and I usually wouldn't recommend just going all creature tokens, and you can do a combination of all of them, but creature tokens are the most vulnerable out of the tokens, right? Because creatures like a Wrath of God, spell can take them out quite easily. That being said, you also have access to things that can break this, like a Village Bell Ringer. Okay, cool. Enters the battlefield. Untap all my creature tokens. Tap them again for mana. Tap to draw cards. Bounce the Village Bell Ringer back to my hand with a multitude of things. Play it again, do it again, and again, and again. Yeah, you can do some crazy things with this once you're set up properly. There's a lot of great token production as well. Cards in this. You got token doublers, token triplers. I'd say overall this is a higher end A tier commander, probably a plus, really, if I'm going to be honest. Okay, next up, Bellow, Bard of the Brambles, a 3/3 raccoon bard for 3 mana in Gruul. During your turn, each non-equipment artifact and non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental, and its other types, and has indestructible and haste. So whether this creature deals combat to a player, draw a card. If it didn't have that mana value requirement, this would be a lot better. You just get some early low to the ground enchantments, low to the ground artifacts. Doesn't matter what they do really all that much. You just swing. Unfortunately, it is a bit slower because, yeah, you need to build up resources to actually get those 4 mana, non-aura, non-equipment things out, essentially. And, yeah, then swing and have ways to get them through. Once you're set up, you get a lot of value. But, like, overall... Oh, goodness. This one's either a B or a C. I haven't thrown anything in the B tier yet, which is quite rare, because usually that's the middle of the road. But I think right now that's probably a C tier. Maybe a high-end C tier, but still a C tier in my opinion. Moving on. Camellia the Seedmiser, a 3/3 Squirrel Warlock with Menace for 3 mana. In Golgari, other squirrels you control have Menace. Whenever you sacrifice 1 or more foods, create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. 2 forage, get a counter on each other squirrel you control. Yeah, I mean, this one is interesting. Food does have a decent amount of support. It could still use maybe a little bit more to really make this pop just a bit more. There are, of course, token doublers like we talked about earlier and that kind of stuff as well to make more and more squirrels, more and more foods. Yeah, it is interesting. It is specific to squirrels. It doesn't have, like, the staying power of, like, a Chatterfang, which is like, oh, yeah, double up your tokens, essentially. Instead of this one's like, okay, like, when you make foods, then you get 1 squirrel. 1 or more foods equals 1 squirrel. So I'd say that this one is, again, like, squirrels aren't a terrible tribe, but, you know, they need, like, a commander that is really, really hefty to support them. I'd say this one, again, is probably more of a C tier commander. Goodness gracious. We got too many in the A's and C's, and not enough everywhere else so far, but we'll just see where everything, you know, falls. Clement, the Warry Wart. I'm not worried about it at all. A 3/3 Frog Druid with Vigilance for 3 mana in Simic. Whenever it or another creature control enters, return to 1 target creature control with lesser mana value to its owner's hand. Frogs you control have tap, add green or blue. Spend this mana only cast a creature spell. This one, I mean, I think could be decently underrated because, like, if you're a newer player, you're like, why would I want to bounce something back to my hand? Bouncing something back to your hand can be incredibly beneficial, especially when your entire deck is built around that. Like, the frogs can tap thing, that's nice. You're probably not doing frog tribal with this very effectively. Sure, you might have a changeling in there too, like Mask Vandal or whatever it is. But what you really care about with this is essentially, okay, I play something, I can bounce something else back to my hand, which then I can play and bounce something else back to my hand. You can get, like, a good chain going on where you're getting a lot of value. Like, if you have, like, Peregrine Drake, which can actually net you mana if you've got lands that tap for 1, or for more than 1, I should say. Cloud of Fairies as well. You can go from, like, 1 creature to the next, the next, the next, the next. Cost reduction for creatures as well. ETB value when you're casting things like a Muldrifter, or just if you have something in play that's like, hey, when you cast a creature, you draw a card. You have a lot of different ways to get value out of this. Again, great ETBs you can use and abuse. I'd say overall, Clement, let's throw you in the B tier. You're a good, solid, middle-of-the-road commander. Next up, Flubs the Fool. I love this card. That being said, I'm going to try my best not to let it, influence my judgment. A 0/5 Frog Scout for 3 mana in Teamer. You may pledge a land on each of your turns. Nice. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, draw a card if you have no cards in hand, otherwise discard a card. I love that. It's spicy. It's so spicy. It's like you have to have no hand or you're losing your hand, essentially, at the same time. Absolutely amazing, though, but if you have no hand, you're drawing a card every single time you play a land or cast a spell. That's awesome. And, of course, there's ways to take advantage of that. The way that I would probably build around it is, like, hand control. I would have ways to just, like, discard the cards out of my hand, essentially, and then also maybe still utilize them as well in other ways, like, the Containment Construct or whatever that one is. Playing things from exile as well. Doubling up on card draw, taking advantage of not having a hand, essentially. I think that if you build this the right way, it can be decently powerful. Once you get set up, you do need to get set up, though. I think it's a B tier commander. I mean, some might argue for a C. I don't think it's anywhere near a D. Some people might think oh, it's terrible, you lose cards. It's like, well, losing cards can be a good thing, too. Next up, Glarb, Calamities, Augur, a 2/4 Frog Wizard Noble, because that's a thing, and Solitaire with Death Touch. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library. I mean, anytime you just get access to the top of your library, that is an amazing thing, because, well, you can utilize things that, manipulate the top of your library. It's like, oh, okay, I don't want that. Get rid of it. All of a sudden, I might get something better if I, mill that away, exile it away, draw that card, whatever it is. And then also, of course, being able to play out the top of your library, it's kind of like a second hand. This one's more restrictive because, again, you need to, only mana value 4 or greater, so you can't, have cards on the top of your library that are less than that, and there's going to be a balance like that in your deck of, how many of 4 or greater, how many not. You can just go all 4 or greater if you really want to. And this can also help you, manipulate the top of your library as well. Untap effects can help too. But yeah, overall, it's interesting. It is limited because the most value you're going to get out of it is when you do have a not less functional deck, but a less efficient deck when it comes to mana value. You really want to take advantage of that force. So I'd say overall, because of the extra value you're getting from this, but the restrictiveness, I'm going to go with a B tier commander. There you go. Look, we got to the B tiers, okay? Moving on. Helga, Skittish, Seer, a 1/3 Frog Druid for 3 mana in Bant. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, gain 1 life, put a counter on Helga. Tap at X mana of any one color, X is its power. Spend this mana only cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X their mana cost. Yeah, this is a commander, again, kind of like what we just talked about with the previous commander, Glarb. Hey, you are restricted to getting value out of things with mana value 4 or greater, essentially. That being said, yeah, once this is set up, once you get going with it, you get a ton of mana out of it. There's untap effects you can utilize. You can't utilize this mana to untap, so there's no, there's broken things you can do with it. Sure, if you've got a couple things set up, but you can't just oh, okay, Sword of the Parents, untap, 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 infinite mana. This one, though, a good amount of value to be had. I'd say overall, again, a pretty solid B tier commander. There's some good commanders in this set where we have some really heavy hitters. Next up, Mabel. We'll see if that one is. Mabel, Heir 2, Cragflame, a 3/3 Mouse Soldier for 3 mana in Boros. Other mice you control get ++1. When it enters, create Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with. Equipped creature gets ++1, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and equip 2. Mice Tribal really isn't the most powerful thing out there, and even if you attach Cragflame to this, it's like, okay, cool, I've got a 4/4 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Yay, and that costs a lot of mana to do so. I'd say, unfortunately, Mabel, in terms of commanders, you are toward the bottom of the list in the D tier. Next up, Warry, Trash Tactician, my apologies for mispronouncing any names. A 2/4 Raccoon Warrior for 3 mana in Gruul. Beginning of your first main phase, add red or green for each raccoon you control. Whenever you expend 4, you gain 3 life. Whenever you expend 8, exile the top 2 cards of your library. To the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. There's a good amount of value to be had with this. Again, Raccoon Tribal is not going to be the most powerful thing out there. There's only so much support for it, and most of it's from this set. So you're going to be utilizing some bad cards if you really want to lean heavily into that. Changelings, yes, as well, too, but there's only so many of those as well. Expending 4, gaining 3 life, that's not all that great. That's okay. You can have some life gain synergy in there, sure. Expending 8 is a lot. You do get Impulse Draw too, though, so that's nice, too. I think overall, it's just kind of underwhelming, so I'm going to be throwing you in the D tier. You're just not quite up to where those other ones are in the C, even. Next up, the infamous Cruelclaw. Here we go. A 3/3 Weasel Mercenary with Menace for 3 mana in Rakdos. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile cards to the top of your library to exile a non-land card. You may cast the card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. This is one of those commanders that can just win you the game turn 3. If you ramp early, let's say, I don't even know, you just Soul Ring. if you Soul Ring and then also Signet, you could just get this out turn 2 and also something else. Regardless, if you ramp early enough, you can get this out early, swing on turn 3, hit, and then all of a sudden hit a Blightstone Colossus off the top of the library, and unless your opponents have removal for it, they probably just basically lose. This is the kind of commander where you also can just get extra combat after extra combat after extra combat. You copy spells to get more extra combats. You can tutor for spells to get on top of your library as well, like a Vampiric Tutor. This is one that is incredibly powerful. Also, Double Strike gives you this twice. Extra combats give you this again and again and again. Yeah, there's some crazy things that you can do with this one. I'd say this is probably at the top end of the commanders from Bloomburrow, at least one of them. And yeah, I'd say it's worthy of the title of S tier with just the bonkers things that it can do. Yeah, this can be just game over so quickly with this because you're just, it's like Cascade, but without a limitation. You have to get through, sure, you got Menace, but you have other ways to get through as well. there is a limitation on you know, it getting through, but if you get it through, like, there's no limitation on the Cascade. Again, it's like Cascade equal, or no, Cascade, and you consider this mana value to be like infinite, essentially. Just hit whatever out the top, and then you get to cast it for free. Crazy. Next up, Zinnia Valley's Voice, a 1/3 bird bard with flying for 3 mana in Jeskai, plus X plus 0, X a number of other creatures you control, base power 1. That's nice. Probably not the focus of the commander, though, if I was going to be honest about it. Creature spells you cast have Offspring too. So, yeah, I'd say that with this, you want to focus on that part pretty heavily. Sure, you can build around that, and yeah, you could turn this commander into a 2-shot, maybe in a 1-shot KO with a go-wide strategy of a lot of 1/1s. That being said, yeah, if you can just, like, get an extra copy of Dockside Extortionist, gross. Extra copy of Esper Sentinel, gross. Extra copy of a lot of things. And also you have like Anointed Procession, Overtalk. You've got ways to double and triple up tokens. You got ways to double up ETBs as well, like Panoramaticon. Yeah, you can do some really disgusting things with a commander like this. So yeah, you really use and abuse ETBs with this kind of a thing. Also populate Song of the World Soul. I'd say this is probably an A tier commander with just the amount of low to the ground creatures that have incredible ETBs or triggers, and you can just get an extra copy of them. Like it's nothing. For an extra 2 mana, that's crazy. And then once you get that extra copy, it's so easy to, again, populate that, get extra copies of that too. Absolutely crazy. Next up, Zorline Cosmos Caller. A 3/3 bat cleric with flying and vigilance for 3 mana in Orzhov. Whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. When it enters or attacks, you may pay Orzhov in 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less to your grave of the battlefield. They finality counter on it. It's an interesting commander. I'd say compared to a lot of the other ones, though, it's pretty weak. It is the bat. I mean, bat tribal really isn't all that of a thing. Like the life gain synergies could be very nice, but yeah, there's not really that many great bats out there. There's a couple like Mirkwood bats, but like, there's only so many good bats out there. That being said, that is a nice enter or attack. It's enter or attack. It's kind of like the Titan, but like not quite like Sun Titan, because you have to pay mana and 2 life, sure, as well, to actually get something back. Mana value 3 or less, that's a non-land as well, so you can't ramp with this too. That being said, you can get good value out of certain like enchantments, artifacts, those kind of things out as well. Cheat the things into play. Again, you've got Entomb effects. I'd say overall, I'd throw this one at a C tier commander. It's not the worst of the worst. It's definitely not the best of the best. Not quite even middle of the road. Next up, Biza, however you say that. The Bounding Spring, 4/5 Elemental Elk for 4 mana in white. Enters, create a treasure token opponent controls more lands than you. You gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. Draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. Basically, if opponents have more things than you, you get a lot of value. You're in mono white, so chances are an opponent has more lands than you. I mean, it's almost guaranteed, essentially. So getting more treasures, that's great. And if you blink this, like, that doesn't even affect that, right? Because with the other ones, it's like, okay, you're gaining life, and opponents have more life, you're going ahead of them at that point. The fish, like, okay, you get more creatures. You might get more creatures than the other opponents. Draw a card, you might have more cards in hands by the other opponents if you keep blinking this. That being said, getting treasures does not affect your land count. So, yeah, you can definitely do some infinite things with this. I mean, if you've got, like, Ashnod's Altar, too, if you've got Eldrazi Displacer, you can get, like, infinite value out of this. You are in mono white, which, in my opinion, is the weakest out of all the color combinations. You need some setup to actually make this work, and you need your opponents to actually do specific things, which is usually what they're going to be doing anyways, getting ahead of you on lands. And you can control the creatures, but they need at least 1 creature, essentially. But, yeah, you can control the creatures. So, I mean, 2 creatures they need. But yeah, basically, it's an interesting commander. It's one that isn't the worst. There are some crazy things you can do with it, but I'd say it is a C tier commander compared to the rest. Yeah, mono white really does hold it back just a bit. Bria, Riptide, Rogue, a 3/3 auto rogue for 4 mana in Izzet, Prowess. Other creatures you control have Prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. It's interesting. Like, if you go wide and spell sling, like, this doesn't make you tokens, but again, it makes any tokens that you do have or other creatures that you have quite a lot better when you do have prowess with them. And you can also make things unblockable. It's going to take a really big turn, though, to make an impact enough. I mean, you could, like, one punch man with this, like, spell. This is unblockable. Give it double strike with something and hit someone, sure. Yeah, you need the right turn to really come about with that. Giving other creatures prowess is nice as well. My gut says, though, this is probably a C tier commander. Just kind of looking at how it stacks up to other ones. Like, this is not quite even at Glarb's level. It's just funny saying, like, magic names, like, not to Glarb's level. And that's a sentence that makes sense. Eluge or Deluge, or, I mean, I think it's Eluge probably because it's from, like, Deluge I don't know. Eluge is funnier. Star Elemental Fish, the Shoreless Sea for 4 mana in blue. Power touch equal to the number of islands you control. Whenever a luge enters or attacks, play a flood counter on target land. It's an island in addition to its other types for as long as it's got a flood counter on it. The first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn costs blue or 1. Less to cast for each land you control a flood counter on it. I don't know if we have any other cards out there that can really reduce the cost of instant sorceries by a non-generic pip. I mean, by a pip, essentially, by a blue pip. And this makes it so you can essentially cast things for free, which is absolutely crazy. Once you get things set up, you're like, okay, each turn, I get a free instant, basically, to cast. Once you get set up enough. You're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I'll just cast this for free. Oh, yeah, you're going to cast a spell on your turn. I'm going to counter that with a free counter spell on your turn. It is like one spell each turn, but still a lot of value to be had. And as you get going again, the bigger and bigger and bigger spells you can cast for free does take some setup. But yeah, this also can just be a win condition for you, being a, well, I mean, equal to the number of islands you control, which counts the flood counter lands too. So it can very easily become a 3-shot KO in not too much time at all. I'd say overall, with the amount of value you can get, I'd put this one in the A tier. Moving on. Hazel, the Root Bloom. Playing too much Elden Ring lately. 3/5 Squirrel Druid for 4 mana in Golgari. Tap, pay 2 life. Tap X on tap tokens you control at X mana, any combination of colors. At the end of your end step, create tokens copy of target token you control. If it's a squirrel, you get 2 copies instead. Squirrel Tribal, I mean, with Chatterfang is insane because Chatterfang gives you all the squirrels. There is more support these days for squirrels. There is. It doesn't mean that building this Squirrel Tribal would be the most, effective version of it. Building just, make a ton of tokens as fast as you can might be more effective. There are certain, infinite things that you could do with it, limited based on your life. Teamer Sabertooth, Great Oak Guardian, infinite casting, infinite untapping, infinite mana. Limited based off of, your life total. That being said, yeah, you can generate a lot of mana quite quickly with this. I'd say where it stacks up, though, compared to the rest, it does require some setup. There are, of course, ways to make a lot of tokens very quickly. Oh, I might regret this, but I think this one, just looking at the A tier, this is probably more so a B tier commander. The other ones just have better ways to win. I mean, I guess just dumping a ton of things like a Torment Hellfire can do it, but I think it requires a little more setup. Okay, we're going to go with that and maybe have some angry squirrel fans out there. Next up, Hugs Grizzly Guardian, a 5/5 Badger Warrior for X red green. Trample enters, exile the top X card your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. You may play additional land on each of your turns. This is temporary card advantage with the impulse draw, basically. And yeah, you can dump a ton of mana into that. You're getting extra lands each turn, so that's ramp as well. And of course, you're in green, so you've got plenty of ways to ramp. So yeah, temporary. You do, the thing with this one is you want more and more ways to kind of just bring this back to your hand so you can replay it. You can also sacrifice, but then you're paying additional commander tax too, so keep that in mind. But yeah, being able to replay this can be quite nice, so you can impulse draw again. So with this, you're getting temporary card advantage and ramp. I mean, those are two pretty good things with a 5/5 Trampler for 4 mana, basically, with X. I mean, yeah. I'd say this one overall is a pretty good middle-of-the-road commander at B tier. Next up, Ms. Bumbleflower. Now, this one I might get some flack for, and that's okay. A 1/5 Rabid Citizen with Vigilance for 4 mana in Bant. Whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. But a counter creature, it gains flying until end of turn. This is the second time this ability was resolved this turn. You draw 2 cards. A comparable card to this one, in my opinion, is a Feldergriff. Feldergriff is group hug, but I like to play it political control, okay? So with that one, Feldergriff can force opponents to get hippos, which they might not see as a downside, but it is a very big downside late in the game for them when you take those hippos and do stuff with them, or say hey, I took the hippos and swung at you, or I, made you sacrifice them, and you get a lot of value out of those hippos, okay? That being said, Feldergriff can also bounce back to your hand, but it allows your opponent to may draw a card. They don't have to draw the card. This is a forced card draw. And some players might be like, well, that's a huge downside to it because, yeah, you're just giving someone's value. Yes, you are, but they have to draw it. And if you go infinite with this, you win. If you just cast something infinitely, it doesn't matter what it is, and there's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, Alurin and Shrieking Drake. Alurin lets you play creatures from your hand for free, essentially costs a certain amount. And Shrieking Drake lets you play it and bounce it back to your hand again and again and again and again and again. And guess what? By doing that, you mill someone out. They lose. There's also, 5 other ways in another episode that I mentioned about this. But basically, this is a commander that you don't even have to get out until you're ready to do that, number 1. Number 2, if you want to get it out early, yeah, play the group hug player. Be like, oh, I'm just here to help. All right, you and me, we're buddy-buddy, okay? Yeah, you're behind. All right, I'll help you out. All right, awesome. All right, I'm casting spells. Keep in mind, the second spell you cast on every single turn, you're drawing 2 cards, so you can just dig down to get the cards that you need. You also have tutors that get the exact things that you need too in these colors. And all of a sudden, yeah, okay, I got my pieces. Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay, I combo and I win. Now, is this more like, would you say like a CDH? It's not a CDH level commander. From the casual perspective, my playgroup's okay if it's like a couple card combo. Like you need like a couple of pieces. It shouldn't just be like, oh, okay, I played, you know, whatever, Thassa's Oracle plus Demonic Consultation, I win. That's more of CDH. This, I would say, in my opinion, again, in a casual environment with the right deck setup, this one can be a brutal commander that can win the game for you. Again, you can just, A tier for me, you can just, again, buddy up with one other player, make them think that you are completely on their side and be like, yeah, we need to stop this. So you're giving them extra value to help you against these other players. And all of a sudden at the end of the game, you're like, oh, by the way, I combo and win. Okay, cool. Moving on. Ren the Restless Relentless. There we go. 3/4 Rat Rogue with Ward 2 for 4 mana in Dimir. If a creature opponent controls would die, exile instead. At the beginning of each end step, create X/1/1 black rat creature tokens with. This creature gets +1 for each other rat you control, where X the number of creatures opponents control that were exiled this turn. That's each end step, not just your own, so do keep that in mind. First of all, this is a commander that protects itself with that Ward 2. It doesn't need that, Wizards. Why do you keep doing that? It also hurts opponent strategies just by being in play that are about the graveyard, essentially. Like, okay, LTBs, death triggers, as well as, you know, decks that want to keep creatures in the graveyard, like reanimation strategies. And also, this just says, hey, you know what? If your opponent's creatures left for any reason and were exiled, like Blink decks, you just get a ton of rats. But also, like, just, yeah, hey, have a bunch of Edict effects, most likely. Have opponents sacrifice a ton of things. Okay, cool. They exiled. Awesome. I get a ton of rats, which all get bigger based on the number of rats. This can be a pretty powerful commander at the end of the day. I would say that this one is, I mean, we got a lot in the A tier, but I think this is an A tier commander. You can get a lot very quickly with that. Wick the World Mine. 2/4 Rat Warlock for 4 mana in black, but it's actually in Grixis. Whenever it or another rat you control enters, you get a 1/1 snail. If you don't control a snail, otherwise put a counter on a snail you control. It basically like kind of army in a way, snail army. By paying Grixis color, sacrifice a snail, deals damage to the sacrifice creature's power to each opponent, then draw a card to equal sacrifice creature's power. I mean, making a bunch of rats, there's only so many ways to do that. There are some powerful ways that you can do that. I mean, it is interesting. Like, there are ways also, like, to make all your creatures into either rats or snails, which can benefit you, and it can be like a one-shot once you get going. Like, there are damage doublers, damage triplers. You can, like, have, like, whenever you draw a card, you drain your opponent's life, too. That being said, it takes a lot of setup to really make this work. It is very, very specific on what it wants to do. And if you're building up that snail and then it gets dealt with before you can do this, then that's kind of unfortunate. I'd say overall, it's a very cool card, but I think it's a C tier commander in terms of power. Moving on. Alania Divergent Storm. Goodness. 3/5 Otter Wizard for 5 mana. And is it, whenever you cast a spell, if it's the first sorcery spell, first instant, the first source spell, or the first otter spell other than this commander, essentially, you may have target opponent draw a card. If you do, copy that, switch targets with a copy. I mean, this might just be lazy, but I think this is literally just like an S tier commander, just because if you literally just chuck in the deck extra turn dot deck, you win. That's all you need to do, because you have this commander. You can ignore the otter part, that does not matter at all. You play this, all of a sudden you just cast an extra turn spell next turn. Oh, okay, cool, I get 2 extra turns. Moving on. And next turn, oh, okay, cool, I cast another extra turn spell. Okay, doubles that up. Getting 2 extra turn spells for the price of 1 is absurdly broken. Absurdly. And then, of course, if you go up to like an expropriate, okay, cool, I get more than 2 extra turns, or I steal all your best stuff. And then also like time stretch, okay, I get 4 extra turns. All you need is just a commander that can literally just double up your instant sorceries, and you probably win the game if you literally just build extra turns deck. So it's probably an S tier commander. I mean, it is decently expensive at 5 mana, but yeah, if you ritual and then get some extra turns, you just win. Arthur Marigold Knight. 4/5 Mouse Knight with haste for 5 mana in Jeskai. Whenever it and at least one other creature attack the top 6 cards of your library, you may put a creature card from among them on the battlefield tapped and attack. You put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Turn that creature to owner's hand and have combat. I mean, yeah, if you have top of the library manipulation, ways to tutor things to the top of your library, like Enlightened Tutor could get like an artifact creature like a Blightsteel Colossus, sure. You also, I mean, you need to find ways to protect this though. Like it does have like that high end like variability, like, okay, I swing and I maybe win or take out an opponent, but you can get a lot of value out the top of your library if you just chuck in a bunch of high value, high mana creatures. It doesn't need to swing with another one, but you got plenty of ways to like make little tokens like with certain other spells essentially, and then all of a sudden you have friends to swing with this. You're gonna find ways to actually get this through too. so it doesn't die each time or give it indestructible. But yeah, overall, it's probably more of a middle ground commander, I would say. So I'd have to throw this one in the B tier. Next up, Dragonhawk Fate's Tempest. The only dragon in the set, I think? I don't know. We didn't really need a dragon in this set, Wizards. I don't know why you did that. Maybe you have a contract here. Like, we must put a dragon every set from now on. 5/5 bird dragon with flying for 5 mana in red. Whenever it enters or attacks, exile a top X card to your library. X is the number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. You may play those cards until your end step. Beginning of your next end step, 2 damage each opponent for each of those cards that are still exiled. I mean, once you get built up, you get absurd amounts of value with this and absurd amounts of damage with this. Like, you can, like, one-shot players if you're built up properly by being like, oh, okay, cool, I've got damage doubler in play, whatever. I just exiled so many cards and you all take this much damage. Also, since this is dealing the damage, lifelink helps you, get that as well. It does take build-up. It is power 4 or greater. You can adjust the power of creatures. Like, okay, all my creatures get +2/+0 until I'm turned or whatever, those types of cards. You need a little bit of setup, though, to really make this work. So it's like, go wide, but also go a little bit tall to really get the most out of this. You are limited to mono red. So I think overall, I'd probably put this one in the B tier. Maybe that's a little too generous as well, but you are getting, like, additional temporary card advantage, too. Castrol, the Wing-Crested, a 4/5 bird scout for 5 mana in Azorius flying. Whenever one of our birds you control deal combat to a player, choose one. Put a bird creature card from your hand or graveyard on the battlefield, find an counter on it. Counter each bird you control, draw a card. There's a decent amount of birds out there. This is a decent amount of value. I mean, if it was a different creature type, I'd probably give it at least a B tier. It's probably like a C+, B-, if I'm going to be honest. Because, again, you are limited to birds. There's some good birds out there, but there's only so many good birds out there. So you're probably going to use some inefficient creatures to really justify it. Like, there's powerful things you can do with it. Like, if you have Double Strike with, like, a True Conviction, giving all your creatures Double Strike, then sure, you get that twice, because it is one or more birds combination to a player. So you can get, like, 1, 2, 3 opponents, 3 triggers off this. But if you have Double Strike at 6, I mean, take some setup. But I think overall, you're probably a C tier commander, just because, again, it is birds and not a more supported tribe. Next up, gross. Maha It Feathers Knight. 6/5 elemental bird with flying trample, ward, discard a card for 5 mana in black. Creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. This is probably like an A+ tier commander, I would say. It is so good, so brutal, and gonna be so annoying to play against because, like, the opponent just gets this in play, and then literally it just has anything that gives your opponent's creatures -1 toughness, which there are perpetual things like the Karavek and the mono black Karavek. Yeah, if you just have that in play, your opponents, like, literally, unless they have an Anthem in play or those creatures have counters on them, they just don't exist anymore. They're gone. And opponents can't play creatures then, too. There's also his ward discard a card, which is relevant. But yeah, being able to just get this in play and wipe the board and, like, perpetually wipe the board. This reminds me of that one, like, slug commander in Dimir as well, where it's just like, if you don't deal with it, you're not going to have an army. And then even when you do deal with it, if I literally just play this again, your army is gone again. So yeah, this is very, very brutal. Mono black holds it back a little bit compared to some of the other ones in the S tier, I think, but a very, very good commander. Next up, Mr. Foxglove, a 3/5 Fox Rogue with lifelink for 5 mana in Bant. Whenever attacks, draw cards equal the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. Be able to potentially cheat out a creature. This does not have haste. I think that would really boost this a bit because you have to get in play. Obviously, there's ways to give it haste. But then, yeah, wait. Swing with it. Probably try to find some ways to protect it so you're not just losing it every single time or get it through. But yeah, being able to draw cards equal the difference. If you got ways to manipulate your own hand, that's great. And have less cards so you can draw, again, if your opponent has like 7 cards, like, cool, I'll draw up to that. You're dependent upon your opponents with this too. Or, yeah, if you've got more cards, be like, oh, I'll cheat this giant thing into play. I think overall, it does take some setup to really get going, but I think it's a good, solid B-tier commander compared to, again, we've got a lot of good commanders from this set. Next up, speaking of not that, the Odd Acorn Gang. A 5/5 Squirrel Warrior with 5 for 5 mana in Glarb, Menace, Trample, and Reach. Squirrels you control have tap target squirrel you control, I should say. It's +2/+2 and gains Trample top turn. Activate as a sorcery. Whenever one or more squirrels you control deal combat to a player, draw a card. I mean, there's a lot of things holding this one back, I would say. Number one, it is specific, like incredibly specific again to squirrels. Squirrels are, again, decently supported, more so these days than they were, but still not the most supported tribe at all. Your squirrels can only pump other squirrels for some reason, and also only at sorcery speed. And Wizards, just with the precon commanders, always with these, like, you don't want combat tricks at all? Why? Why? Is that not fun gameplay for new players or something? Like, oh, I tricked you, huh? Well, that was mean. Oh, darn. Is that what it is? Why? Like, all these things are like what's the one in, like from Witherbloom, the Strixhaven one. I can't remember her name. But yeah, same thing. Like, no combat tricks. No combat tricks. Okay. It also does give you some card advantage from that as well. 1 per each player. Squirrels, building it up. There's a lot better squirrel commanders out there. I'd say overall a C tier commander. Moving on. This one, apologies, don't have the English version of it yet out there, but 6/6 trampling elemental wolf, I believe, for 5 mana in Cruel. And then it also basically says enchantment spells you cast have from your hand have Cascade. So, yeah, a lot of additional value to be had once you get things set up, once you get this in play. Again, like cascading into an enchantment, get that into play. You've got some constellation things in play probably to give you extra benefits. You can have like low to the ground enchantments like Wild Growth that you can hit and get extra value, you know, from ramp. You can have, you know, a 0 mana card in your deck too. Like, yeah, some crazy things that might happen with some of the decks that I build. And like you cast a 1 mana enchantment, all of a sudden you hit that every single time. You can do a lot of value out of that. This is a good value engine once you get going. I'd say overall a B tier commander. Moving on. Igra, Eater of All, a 6/6 elemental cat for 5 mana in Golgari. Ward, sacrifice a food. Other creatures are food artifacts. This other types have pay 2, tap, sacrifice this permanent, gain 3 life, basically being a food. Whenever a food is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 counters on this. This is probably, again, kind of like Maha, teetering between like A and S in some ways. It was a little lower costed, which it shouldn't be. It would be probably an S tier commander, but I think overall probably an A, like A plus compared to like our top 2. This is one that turns a lot of cards into like one-sided board wipes in a way. Because all your opponent's creatures are foods, which are artifacts. Now all of a sudden you just cast something that's like, destroy all the artifacts. Your commander is not an artifact. It is not a food itself. So all of a sudden, everything's gone. Sure, your other creatures are gone or whatever. Who cares? This gets an absurd amount of counters on it. Becomes a one-shot KO on anyone. Because there's like, you just need, what, 8 creatures in play for that to happen? Which is very easy in a game of Commander for, you know, between all 3 opponents and yourself. 8 creatures outside of this creature. Yeah. Cast your one-sided board wipe, destroy everything, swing at 1 player, they're gone. They've got no more blockers. So, yeah, this, and there's a lot of other things you can play with, like Viridian Revel, drawing a ton of cards when your opponent's artifacts hit the graveyard. Again, turning your opponent's things artifacts is very, very powerful. Yeah, I'd say overall, it's a very good card. And, of course, there's, like, counter synergies you can work well with this, like Hardened Scales to make it even larger. Next up, Birky? No idea. Long Ear of the Law, a 4/4 Rabid Soldier Vigilance for 6 mana in Selesnya. Enters, put a counter each of up to 2 target creatures. Whenever creature control they counter on it attacks, double the number of counters on it. It's a very powerful commander once you get things set up. The thing that's really holding this one back is that, I mean, it is powerful, it requires setup, but it's also 6 mana overall. Maybe I'm undervaluing it, but I mean, like, it's like Colonial Hydra in the command zone, but it's 6. I'd say overall it's probably a B tier commander. Maybe I'm undervaluing it compared to some. It's probably like a B plus, A minus, I'd say, but I'm going to keep it in the B. Finally, Lumbra? Bellow of the Woods? Again, my apologies for mispronouncing any and all these names. Star Elemental Bear with Vigilance and Reach for 6 mana in green. Power touch equal number of lands you control. Whenever enters, mill 4 cards to return all land cards to your graveyard of the battlefield tapped. I mean, you're in mono green. It's like mono green self-mill. This can get really, really big. Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you can get enough lands in your graveyard, then this can really be impactful. It's probably like a C plus, B minus. I'd say because I just put that other one in the B tier. I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Maybe I'm wrong on this one as well. But yeah, I think overall it's pretty limited. So there we go. I think overall I'm pretty happy with the way that things turned out. I do think at the top we definitely do have just... There's a couple that you could be argued, I think, from the A tier to the S tier. Yes, I would say Gev could be argued because persist infinite fun times for you can be quite easy. Maybe the Otter as well. Baylen, potentially, but not really. And Maha's just brutal, so is Igra. But yes, at the top, it's got like, okay, I just literally swing on turn 3 or whatever, and I potentially win. That's just literally what you can do with that commander. Or, hey, I get extra combat like Narset kind of a deck. Gross. And then the Otter, it's just like, oh, I cast an extra turn spell. Okay. Oh, okay, I test another extra turn spell. And it's like, the downside of that is, again, you make an opponent draw a card, but if they're tapped out, or they have no instance, it doesn't matter. You're literally just getting extra turn. It does not matter at all. So, yeah, you just win the game, essentially, when you cast 1 extra turn spell, probably, to set yourself up to win. So, yeah, I think overall... There's like a glut of ones like in the middle, which I think is interesting. Like, the worst of the worst is just worse. The C's are all right, and then the B's like, yep, that's pretty solid. A's are really good and can argue for that S tier, but I think the S tier is just up there. Regardless, this is all based on my own opinions, and you might disagree, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what you think I'm right on, what am I wrong on, And of course, let me know what your favorite commander is from this set in the pre-con. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.